Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie. This is episode number 848 for December 6th, 2020. Coming up in a few minutes.
We probably have the 6 bidders in the room, and probably 5-6 bidders on telephone. So there's a lot of interest in it, and to get the record price here, we certainly weren't thinking it would get a record price. We were maybe hoping, but we weren't thinking it would. So it's a tremendous experience.
Here's just one example of how the auction market for rare whiskeys has grown in the last couple of years. In the last few weeks, Sotheby's has held 3 whiskey auctions in New York, London, and Hong Kong, with combined sales of $4.6 million. Jamie Ritchie heads up the wine and spirits team at Sotheby's. In October of last year, he brought down the hammer on bidding for a 1926 Macallan that holds the current record for the most expensive bottle of whiskey ever sold at auction, nearly $1.9 million. He'll tell us what it was like that day, and we'll discuss the boom in whiskey auctions on this week's WhiskyCast In-Depth. I'll also have the What I'm Tasting This Week department, our latest Whiskey Club of the Month winner, and on Behind the Label.
We did not invent this process, but Brown-Forman adopted it in the early 20th century. So we've been doing it for probably, right at 100 years as a company.
The news is next on this week's WhiskyCast.
Hey, whiskey fans, I'm Gabriel Cardarella, brand ambassador for the world's most awarded blended Scotch whiskey, Dewar's. You could probably guess I've got a lot of stories, but for me, the good ones have one thing in common. They're best told over a glass of whiskey. So this holiday, give the gift of a good story and even better whiskey. Give the gift of Dewar's 15.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast. Hiya, Mark. How's my favourite Redbreast fan doing? Look, I'm going to address the elephant in the room right away. We both know your podcast is dying for a co-host, and I know just the lad who can be the Robin to your Batman. How's that for dropping a hint? Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast, Redbreast. Pass it on.
Let's get started with the news. We've talked in the last couple of weeks about the deadline coming up in the U.S. for Congress to extend a temporary federal excise tax break for small-scale distillers before it expires on New Year's Eve. But New Year's Eve also has major significance to whiskey makers for another reason. That's also the day Great Britain is scheduled to officially end its ties with the European Union. The UK has been living by Europe's rules during the 11-month-long transition period while the former partners try to hammer out a free trade agreement. But with no deal in place, there is concern that whiskey makers on both sides will be hit with tariffs starting next month. The remaining European Union countries make up the largest single export market for Scotch whiskey makers, while Irish whiskey makers count Great Britain among their largest export markets. Irish Finance Minister Paschal Donohoe is also the head of the EU's Committee of Finance Ministers. He told Irish Whiskey Association members and reporters Friday that he is still holding out hope for an agreement.
I am so confident in the people that are representing Ireland and Europe in these negotiations. And if an agreement can be found, it will be found. In terms of what it will mean for the island of Ireland and trade on the island of Ireland, it will change. But that change will be very different to what I did fear was possible last year. And the reason why that trade change will be different will be because of the implementation of the Northern Ireland, to be more precise, because of the implementation, if needed, of the Northern Ireland Protocol on the island of Ireland, which offers the opportunity for trading difficulties to be minimised. While it will unfortunately be the case that the United Kingdom would be a third country, I know that a lot of efforts are underway at the moment to try to ensure that trade flows as freely as possible while also protecting the integrity of the single market. And that's a difficult balance to get right. But it is in the long-term interests of the Irish economy that we do get that balance right. So a lot underway at the moment, David. We will know, I believe, in the coming days if an agreement is possible and what the shape of that agreement will be. And I hope it will give the certainty to Irish whiskey exporters in particular to allow them to continue with their growth.
By the way, if you're following the negotiations between the UK and the European Union, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's lead negotiator is Lord Frost. We know him better in whisky circles as David Frost. He was the chief executive for the Scotch Whisky Association between 2013 and 2016. Donohue's comments came at a Friday morning briefing where Drinks Ireland and the Irish Whisky Association released a new report on what can arguably be called one of the best decades in Irish whisky history. The number of distilleries on the island has grown from just 4 in 2010 to 38 today. Global sales of Irish whiskey have risen 140% between 2010 and the end of 2019, and capital investment in new and existing distilleries reached nearly $1.8 billion over that period. While the COVID-19 pandemic has caused significant economic damage this year, Irish Whisky Association outgoing Chairman David Stapleton expects only a short-term impact.
We've just experienced a remarkable decade of recovery, and this recovery will continue. We are ready to bounce back and to march into the next decade, focused on the continued growth of Irish whisky sales in our established markets and the activation of new emerging markets.
5 years ago, the association set an ambitious goal to reach 12 million cases in annual sales worldwide by 2020, from a point of just under 5 million cases at that point. They reached that goal almost a year ahead of schedule. Walsh Whiskey Company founder Bernard Walsh was the association's chairman at the time. He told me the growth came right on the heels of the bourbon boom.
With the bourbon boom and the interest in all things bourbon, that was now migrating to Irish, and the experimentation and the interest in Irish. So from 2010 on, we started to see an interest. Oh, tell me more about Irish. So what do you mean there's 3 styles of Irish whiskey? Well, yeah, isn't there just malt whiskey and there's blended whiskey with grain, yes. But tell me about pot. Tell me about single pot still whiskey. So this was all new and exciting.
You can watch the entire interview with Bernard Walsh and find out more on the Irish Whisky Association's report in the news section at whiskycast.com. In other news, construction should begin in early 2021 on Isla's 11th distillery. There's word this week that Argyll and Bute Council has finally given planning approval for the Elixir Distillers project just east of Port Ellen. Elixir founders Sukhinder and Rajbir Singh originally applied for planning permission more than 2 years ago and had to revise their plans to overcome opposition from island residents. Sukhinder Singh declined our request for an interview this week. He is waiting to receive the final documentation from the council before making any comments. They're celebrating at Heaven Hill in Bardstown, Kentucky this week, socially distanced, of course. That's because Thursday, Whiskey Advocate magazine named Larceny Barrel Proof Batch B520 as its 2020 Whiskey of the Year. I talked with Heaven Hill President Max Shapira shortly after the announcement.
We were just ecstatic and continue to be ecstatic about receiving this. It's just a rare thing to receive an award like this, and it's really quite special, and we are very most appreciative of it.
The celebrations will continue this week at Heaven Hill because this coming Sunday, December 13th, will mark the company's 85th anniversary. I'll have more from my interview with Max Shapira next time around. Jim Beam's American Stillhouse Visitors Center at the distillery in Claremont, Kentucky, will be closed until late next summer. Not because of the pandemic, but because of construction. Beam Suntory is investing $60 million to upgrade the visitors' experience at the Jim Beam Distillery, or should I say, the James B. Beam Distilling Company. No, they're not getting fancy in Claremont. That was the original name of the distillery when Colonel Jim Beam opened it right after the end of Prohibition. Beam Managing Director Malini Patel told me that's just part of embracing the heritage behind all of the Jim Beam whiskeys.
American Stillhouse will be renamed American Outpost. And that's just going back to what it was called when at the original start of things. So a lot of it is just leaning back into our history and looking at what stories we want to tell and how do we express the full breadth of our portfolio. So that's what, when we come back in late summer next year, what will be is it'll be rebranded as James B. Beam Distilling Company. We will have a new consumer experience. We'll have a kitchen table, which is our new food and beverage space, and it will be 5,000 square feet, really in beautiful views, but a lot of the food that the family kind of has grown up around and will be very skewed to locally sourced and supporting kind of the local community in Kentucky. So really excited about what that has. And then there will be the craft distillery, as well as the American Outpost will be the revived American Stillhouse in terms of retail and tasting rooms.
The entire interview with Malini Patel is available to watch in the news section at whiskycast.com, including her story of spending some time at the blackjack table with Fred Noe. One other change to report, the Jim Beam Urban Stillhouse experience in downtown Louisville's 4th Street Live Entertainment District will be closing for good at the end of this month. Patel says the lease was up on the Urban Stillhouse space, and the decision was made to focus on the distillery project for now, with plans to open something different in Louisville in the long-term future. The hope is to have work completed at the distillery in time for the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. On that note, this week the Bourbon Festival announced its plans for 2021 after being forced to take this year's event virtual because of the pandemic. The 2021 festival will be held the weekend of September 16th through the 19th in Bardstown. One new highlight this year, participating distilleries will each have their own special festival bottlings for the first time. Tickets will officially go on sale next summer, but in another first, the festival is selling gift cards now on its website that can be redeemed for event tickets next summer. Also out of bourbon country, Woodford Reserve has unveiled the latest release in its Masters Collection series. This year's version is dubbed Very Fine Rare Bourbon and includes casks that were filled back in 2003 when Chris Morris was named Woodford's Master Distiller. I spoke with Chris this week about the latest whiskey in the Masters Collection series.
Hard to believe, 16 years of Masters Collection. Each one different. And, as we look back, that's been our strength and maybe a weakness because people don't know what to expect each year. And if you have a favorite like an Old Forester birthday bourbon, it's Old Forester birthday bourbon and it's going to be bourbon and people line up and wait for it. We just haven't had that phenomenon with Woodford Reserve Masters Collection. It is what it is, but again, each one has been different and special, and we believe this one is as well.
The Winter 2020 Masters Collection Very Fine Rare Bourbon will be available in the U.S. and key export markets. The recommended retail price, $129.99 a bottle. One other note, Assistant Master Distiller Elizabeth McCall's name is on the bottle, along with Chris Morris. It's the first bottle that carries her name since she was named as his assistant 2 years ago. I received a sample this week. I'll have my tasting notes for it soon at the WhiskyCast website. Other new whiskeys of note this week, The Glenturret is releasing a new limited edition Providence decanter with a 33-year-old single malt inside. The decanter is the first in the Glenturret by Lalique series and comes, of course, in a Lalique decanter. Lalique chairman Silvio Denz is one of the distillery's owners. Only 320 decanters will be available through the Glenturret website. The price, £9,800 each. That's about $13,200 at current exchange rates. The Balvenie's past projects promoting artisans have featured the late Anthony Bourdain and three-time Indianapolis 500 winner Dario Franchitti as curators. Now, Questlove has signed on for the next installment. It'll be a digital video series called Quest for Craft that premieres next fall, but kicks off this month with a holiday gift promotion in conjunction with Goldbelly.com and ReservedBar.com. We've been covering the story of Graham McAloney and his distillery in Victoria, British Columbia for several years now. This week, McAloney's Caledonian Distillery released its own single malt whiskies for the first time. Invermally Bourbon Cask, Invermally Portuguese Recharred Red Wine Barrique, and the Glenloy Island Single Malt. They're available at the distillery and select retailers in British Columbia and Alberta, with plans for a U.S. release early next year. Finally, this was a sad week for the folks at Ireland's Dingle Distillery and fans of Irish whiskey in general. Mary Ferreter died suddenly Wednesday at her home in Dingle. She was the original general manager when Dingle opened and later became its global brand ambassador while also heading up export sales. I first met Mary at Whiskey Fest New York several years ago. She hosted a press trip to Dingle in May of last year that I took part in, along with some other writers and bartenders. Mary was a force of nature with a real passion for the town of Dingle and its distillery. Our thoughts are with her husband, PJ, their entire family, and everyone at Dingle. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at WhiskyCast.com. If you missed Friday night's Happy Hour webcast with Daryl McNally, the master distiller at the Dublin Liberties Distillery, it's now available on the WhiskyCast YouTube channel, along with replays of all of our other webcasts. This week I'll be joined by Rob Arnold. He's the master distiller for Firestone and Robertson's TX Whiskey in Fort Worth, Texas. He's also an author and has just released his second book, The Terroir of Whiskey, a distiller's journey into the flavor of place. That's an issue that has become somewhat controversial over the last few years, so bring your questions for Rob Arnold and get ready for an interesting discussion. Join us Friday at 5 p.m. New York time on our YouTube channel, the WhiskyCast Facebook page, Twitter, and Periscope. Time now for the WhiskyCast calendar of events, brought to you by Catoctin Creek Distilling. Moonshine University in Louisville, Kentucky, is holding 3 Stave and Thief Society Executive Bourbon Steward courses over the next few days on the 7th, 11th, and 14th of December, and has already released its schedule for the first half of 2021. We have those dates on the calendar at WhiskyCast.com. Bonham's has its final whiskey auction of the year on Wednesday in Edinburgh, Scotland. Christie's has its own auction on Thursday and Friday in London. And McTeer's wraps up its year of whiskey auctions next Wednesday in Glasgow. Dewar's and Men's Journal magazine are hosting a free online whiskey tasting masterclass on the 16th. Buffalo Trace's annual Lighting of the Trace holiday display is open every night this month in Frankfort, Kentucky. The annual Bourbon and Benevolence charity event in Louisville is online this year, with bidding for rare whiskeys going on now through this Friday. If you're in Canada, The Victoria Whisky Festival in Victoria, British Columbia is still on as of now for the weekend of January 14th through the 17th, with a limited selection of master classes available. You will need to be in Canada for at least 2 full weeks prior to the festival to be able to attend, though. Remember, all in-person events are subject to change on very short notice, depending on local public health restrictions, so please check with event organizers before you make any travel plans. We're updating the calendar at whiskeycast.com with changes to events as we get them, along with new events being scheduled for 2021, and we even have a few already for early in 2022. The calendar of events is brought to you by Catoctin Creek Distilling, makers of Virginia's most awarded spirits, including a brand new rye whiskey finished in Catoctin Creek's own Short Hill Mountain Peach Brandy barrels. Peach Barrel Select Rye Whiskey is on sale now at the distillery in Purcellville, Virginia, and wherever you find Catoctin Creek whiskeys. Visit the Where to Buy page at catoctincreekdistilling.com for details. And please drink responsibly.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast. You know, people always ask me, does Redbreast go better with ice or without? Would it go well with figs, dark chocolate, apple crumble? Is there one particular thing I should enjoy it with? I tell them, yeah, other people.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast.
I want to take just a minute to talk about something serious. Responsibility. I'm not going to get into the importance of wearing masks and social distancing during the pandemic. By now, we should all know just how important that is. In the past, though, I've used this time of the year for an annual reminder of the importance of not only being responsible when you drink, but setting an example for those around you, since the holidays are usually filled with parties. This year, our in-person holiday celebrations will be far less crowded because of the pandemic, but that does not mean it's any less important to practice responsibility when you're drinking. If you're a regular WhiskyCast listener, there's a good chance that your friends and family recognize your appreciation for whiskey. They may even look to you for guidance on what whiskeys to buy or give as gifts. Please, set the example for them on how to enjoy whiskey responsibly, too, especially when it comes to drinking and driving. I've been a journalist for many years, and that included having to report on more than a few fatal traffic accidents where alcohol was involved. Remember, it's a lot easier to get a safe ride than it is to face the consequences of driving under the influence. Let's all set the right example. Oh, wear your masks, too. WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by the 2020 Distillers Edition collection. I mentioned 3 different upcoming whiskey auctions a minute or two ago during the calendar of events. The number of auction houses offering whiskey sales around the world has grown significantly in the last several years, along with the rising interest in rare whiskey as an investment. Sotheby's has emerged as a major player in the whiskey auction market, with 3 auctions last month in New York, London, and Hong Kong that brought in $4.6 million in bids, even though the bidding had to be done online or by telephone because of the pandemic. Jamie Ritchie heads up the wine and spirits team at Sotheby's. He was the auctioneer in October of 2019, when the current world record auction price for a single bottle of whiskey was set, nearly $1.9 million for a 1926 Macallan. I talked with him last week via Zoom. But first, I need to be transparent with you for a minute. Because of a glitch within Zoom, the audio of my questions during the interview wound up distorted, and it wasn't apparent until after our interview ended. For that reason, I re-recorded my questions for Jamie using a transcript of the interview to get them as close as possible to the original version. Now, that is not something I would normally do, but it was the only way to bring you our conversation without hurting your ears every time I ask a question. How surprised are you by the growth in interest in whiskey auctions over the last couple of years? We know, for instance, it's been commonplace in Edinburgh and Glasgow for decades. McTeers and Bonhams have been running whiskey auctions practically every month at their galleries, but now we're seeing it really all over the world.
Right, so we initially obviously saw the increase in the percentage of spirits being offered ourselves through our Hong Kong auctions. And so we were, since 1970, since we were founded in 1970 and started selling wine, we've always included spirits as sort of occasional bottles. And then we saw in 2017 that spirits have become 6% of our Hong Kong auction business. And that's what piqued our interest because essentially we were selling just really high-value bottles of whiskey and some Mau Tai. And as that percentage crept up, then it piqued our interest, and we thought, okay, so this is potentially a new category for us that we've always been selling spirits, but we can grow and develop, and so we did that, and so we then thought about how we would go about, essentially entering the spirits market in a much more determined way than we had done before, and so we then set about recruiting Johnny Fowle, which we did last year, to be our first spirit specialist. And he's based in London. And at the same time, we were working on a consignment of the Ultimate Whisky Collection, which we sold last year. And so that sort of all came together. And so, interestingly enough, last year, we went from the previous year, we were 3% of our sales was spirits. Last year was 13%. And so far this year is 19%. So it really has been an incredible growth market for us, and really continues to be. And I think our focus on it obviously is on the higher end of the market, on the rarest bottles, and I think it's what we're seeing interestingly is while 40% of the bidding comes from Asia and roughly 30% from the US and 30% from Europe, we're selling about 85% of our sales go to Asia. So they're the least price sensitive of the market, and so whilst the bidding's much more spread out, the actual success in securing the bottles is heavily in favour of Asia, and so it's been very interesting, for me as someone who's run our wine business for a long time, to really start understanding the spirits market, what's going on, where's demand coming from, and how it works. Which is one thinks the similarities with wine are significant, but it's a very different market to operate within.
So how is it a different market? Obviously, there are certain legalities involved with spirits that there aren't with wine.
Yes, unfortunately. So we certainly have a different regulatory environment. They have different attributes. You've got the age statement, so a different structure of attributes from an IT point of view. You have different photography requirements. You have with the packaging being much more important than in the spirits market than the wine market. You have different storage requirements, different shipping requirements, and a different group of clients who interact in a different way. And so it's I think when we started out, and having wine integrated into spirits integrated into a wine market was interesting. I think as we've gone forward and expanded the business, we've separated those two out because when you go online, you want the spirits filters to be spirit specific. You want the wine filters to be wine specific. So as we've grown the category, I think separating the two categories out makes much more sense going forward for us, and really focusing in on the different markets for both.
What's the biggest misconception that people have about whiskey and wine auctions?
I think that the biggest misconception is that the only things we sell are really, really expensive. Because obviously, the whether it's the Macallan 26 selling at 1.9 million or a bottle of Romilly Conti selling for 550,000, both of which I was lucky enough to be the auctioneer for. Those are the ones that get the headlines. Those are the ones that make people call to attention. The Macallan 26 got widespread TV coverage, which is rare for our business. And so I think everyone thinks that we just sell that amount of that value of property, where we actually go down to much more affordable everyday levels as well. And I think I think people perceive that we sit around drinking this stuff all the time, and that's the role of what we do in our business. And we certainly do enjoy the bottles of wine and spirits that we can drink, and we certainly and certainly very lucky we do get to drink some extraordinary wines and spirits. But I think it's probably it's not as frequent as everyone thinks that we're doing that.
I'd like to talk about that Macallan 1926 auction, because that is the current world record holder, I believe. What was it like to be on the podium handling that auction?
So it's anytime we do the big sales and the fun sales, is a very exciting opportunity and a privilege to take them. With that auction, it was really our signature entrance to the marketplace. And we wanted to make it a special sale. So I think we created a catalogue that I think was truly unique and hadn't been done before in terms of its rich imagery, its content, the layout, and how we went through it. So I think we first of all sort of created a unique catalogue for it. The second thing was rather than having it in our Bond Street sale rooms in London, which is where the home of all our great auctions, we actually teamed up with our colleagues at RM Sotheby's, which is our car auction, and we chose to put the auction of the whiskey in amongst the car exhibition. So the car exhibition is only up for 2 days, and so we located the auction within the car exhibition. So you had all these cars around, you had all the car bars, and you had all the spirits bars, the whiskey bars. We had a Macallan bar serving drinks to everyone. And then we started selling on the second day at 10 a.m. And then immediately after we finished was the car auction, immediately following at about 5:30. And so I think we just sort of did a combination of putting the sale into a different context, which was sort of exciting and interesting, and combining the cars with the whiskey. And so we had a unique setup. And so it was not at Sotheby's, and so it had a really unique atmosphere to the auction. And I think a combination of the quality of the catalogue, obviously the quality of the whiskies we were selling inside that catalogue, because it was truly great collection, and also the uniqueness of doing this for a first time. And so generally when we do things for a first time and we do them at such a high quality level with such a great collection, there is a little bit of a sort of euphoric moment. And I think that's what we saw. We had many of the world's collectors and the people who follow the whiskey auctions were in tune with it, and selling that particular bottle. And obviously, we as a run up to that bottle, we sold some other very valuable bottles, and we knew we were having a successful day. To be able to be in charge of that, the sale of that singular bottle, it's just fun, to be honest with you. It's as an auctioneer, that's what we live for. We hone our skills, and we try to encourage the bidders to keep bidding and to keep raising their hands. And that was I can't remember how long it was, but probably about 10 minutes to sell it. And it's truly exciting. And we had bidders in the room, we had bidders on the telephone. We probably had the 6 bidders in the room, and probably 5-6 bidders on telephone. So there's a lot of interest in it. And to get the record price, we certainly weren't thinking it would get a record price. We were maybe hoping, but we weren't thinking it would. So it's a tremendous experience.
But as it was getting higher and higher and reaching 1.9 million, what was going through your mind? Are you thinking, these guys are nuts?
No.
This is a bottle of whiskey, for crying out loud.
No, I'm definitely not thinking that. As the auctioneer, I'm thinking, this is great. Let's see how far we can go. And you just take it one bit at a time. You try and you're trying to just encourage people with a smile, a few words, a little humor. You want people to try and feel good about what they're doing. This is, whilst it might be our business, and we're very lucky to work in the spirits business, the wine business, and it's our passion and our joy, but it's also our work. And we have to remember that for most of our clients, this is their hobby, this is their fun. And so when we may be at work, this is them having their fun time. So we've got to make sure that we present it in that light, that this is their fun time and this is special and it's exciting to be a part of and it's enjoyable and it's all that aspect of it. The fact that whiskey is consumable and we share it with friends it's the only thing, wine and spirits are the only thing that Sotheby sells that's consumable, where you share this experience, which is truly unique. And I think, that's what makes our business very special is the camaraderie element, the sharing, the enjoyment, the fun, which is really unique to our business.
How much competition is there among auction houses for these rare bottles? For instance, that 1926 Macallan. How much competition do you have with your colleagues around the industry to be able to sell that bottle?
So, like every industry, it's deeply competitive. There are many good players in the business, who we respect, and I think there's a healthy competition. People have great choices, and I think what's important from our point of view is that we find our niche in the business, and we always try to position ourselves at the very top end of the business. So that's why we went to the exceptional efforts of the Ultimate Whisky Collection to create a catalogue that hadn't been done before, put it in a setting that hadn't been done before, to be innovative around the whole process. So everything we did, we tried to innovate and lead so that we would immediately, if you like, occupy that very top space. And that is the most valuable whiskey collection that's ever been sold in a sale. And so that's our aim. I think the rest of the marketplace is run by great people who's smart competitors who we all have slightly different business models and slightly different niches, and that's normal, but normal and healthy.
One of the things I get a lot of emails about, practically almost on a weekly basis, is somebody claiming a world record auction price for X. The other day it was the auction in Hong Kong at Bonham's for the Ichiro's card series, the 54-bottle set, that went for about $1.5 million. And they're claiming a world record for a Japanese whiskey set at auction. I get things like world records for new distilleries, initial bottling world record for an auction held on a Wednesday with a left-handed auctioneer. How seriously should we take these? The only one that I really recognize is the one you did for that 1926 Macallan, a single bottle of whiskey sold at auction that's certified by Guinness, and it's the only one I recognize as a true world record. Anything else is subject to puffery, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a massive proliferation of look what we've done, haven't we done well, etc., and part of the promotion. So with more limited use, we do promote ourselves as having done different records this year. So I think during COVID we did get the highest price for a single bottle of Japanese whiskey. We got the highest price for a bottle of cognac. We got the highest price for a bottle of Dalmore. So, I think that's just sort of setting, it's just sort of used as informing the marketplace of where the market is. So if there's a record price for a bottle of cognac, so that's in a category. If there's a record price for a bottle of Dalmore, that's for a specific house. Which sort of just gives people a gauge, like, okay, that's never been achieved before for cognac. It's never been achieved before for Dalmore. So I don't think, we're not seeing that in terms of it's more of an indicator of where the market is. You're right. For me, it's just like the most important record is what's the highest price that's ever been sold in that category, so spirits or wine.
So, which crowd has the better time at these auctions, the whiskey folks or the wine folks? When you're doing a whiskey auction or a wine auction, which one gets more raucous and fun?
I think it's the whiskey ones. I mean, the whiskey ones, they were a happy bunch of people, smiling, having a good time, enjoying themselves. Was that the theatre of it being the first, it being a great collection, putting it in amongst the cars, certainly serving whiskey helps when we serve wine at auction. So I think the theatre of it, as we go forward, there will be, we've done an unbelievable digital transformation, during COVID period where we haven't been able to hold live auctions. And we held a couple of live auctions in Hong Kong and and one in London. Yeah, but none in New York since then. And so this digital transformation's not going to go away. So we've transferred a lot of our property to the online auction environment, whether that's with a live finish or not. But it's all online bidding. And so I think what is important is that we need to keep the excitement, the energy, the enthusiasm around the biggest sales. And that's what people respond to and get excited about. What's extraordinary with this market is that the growth we're seeing, and particularly at the younger age groups.
And among younger bidders?
Yeah. I mean, we've had all sorts of interesting data. For example, in the London sale, we had 55% new bidders this year. In Hong Kong, we've had 20 and 30-year-olds being a large, over 20% of the buyers. So we've had this influx of new people. So I think the digital tools that we use today, definitely are helpful in reaching a younger, broader, more dynamic marketplace. And it just shows that there's the interest in spirits and whiskies, from this new demographic, which is truly exciting.
How do you maintain that digital perspective going forward once the pandemic ends?
I don't think we go back. We will run a mix of online-only auctions, online auctions with live closes, and live auctions. But even with a live auction, the online bidding, and the video feed and the online bidding has always, for the last 10 years, played an important role in a live auction. And so, I don't think we go back. I think it is going to be a digital-first, strategy for pretty much all of us. And I'd say there's mobile first as well, because everything's happening on the phone, maybe the iPad next, but the laptop and the computer is, going to be a thing of the past. And so I think, the ease of use, is certainly going to be everywhere, where everyone's focusing.
One final question. It is kind of hard to check the provenance of something when you can't see it, when you're in an online or a virtual environment. How important is it going to be for us to be able to verify that what we are bidding on is authentic? Because, as you know, there are fakers out there. We do have counterfeits in the whiskey world, just as we do in the wine world. There have been people in England who have been caught doing fake whiskeys, for instance. If you can't see it in person, how can you possibly verify it's on... If you can't see it in person, how can you possibly verify its authenticity before you go out and bid on it?
I think it's up to us as the auction houses to be the gatekeeper of that. And we should be making sure that we do all of our best efforts to not sell counterfeit and inauthentic spirits. And you're right, it afflicts the spirits business just as it does the wine business, and about the same ratio. It is something we come across every single day of our work in both businesses. We need to, we have that issue because we obviously do work with different consultants and with different people around the world and back with the distilleries to find out information and to try and verify what we're selling is correct. And so, we work with high magnification. We can always have someone can inspect it, and even if we need someone else to be there, they can take the right images or do over FaceTime, Teams, Zoom, all the tools. They can actually be real time with someone, and so I think. I think it does come down to the person who's selling the property needs to do that process. They need to be reliable and trustworthy. And there's a question: I saw nothing wrong with it. I think if you have suspicions about something or whatever it is, for us it has to be we have to prove it's right before we'll sell it, rather than we'll prove it's wrong. And so I think that comes down to different people's perspectives. Not all auction houses have the same perspective on those issues. But you certainly want to, a good rule of thumb for people is that if something's too cheap, there's normally a really, really good reason for it. And you see people going wrong with and buying things from from out of the mainstream. So if you find something in a little auction house here or there or whatever it is, that's where the people are going to start putting the property that if they have done that. And they'll build up and get bolder from that. So I think you need to be very careful from where you buy from trustworthy sources. Feel free to get second opinions on it. But the auction house or the and it's not just auction houses, yeah. It's in all over the secondary marketplace, and the primary marketplace. So you just need to trust your person that you're buying from, that they've done their due diligence on it.
I guess I do have one more question. Have you ever seen a bottle of wine or a bottle of whiskey or other spirits that you were so tempted by that you decided, I'm going to bid on this one? I want to sit in on the auction as a bidder this time, even if you have to go to somebody else's auction house to do it.
Oh, sure. Yes. I mean, yeah, we're not allowed to bid in our own auctions. So our compliance team are very, 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 very strict about those areas. And we couldn't obviously, buy something from a client directly and circumnavigate either Sotheby's or the auction teams. So we're very compliant on that area. But sure, there are certain things that turn up in other places where just like, I love that, and it's not available elsewhere, and let me go buy that. So yes, by all means, we do, and we're allowed to. And what we're not allowed to do is buy things and flip them. But we do. But we buy them for personal consumption and enjoyment for sure.
For instance, if you walk into Bonham's in Edinburgh and you run into somebody like Martin Green or one of your colleagues, do they get a grin when they see you coming in to bid and go, yeah, you guys got this one. I want this thing.
Yeah, I think there's healthy respect amongst us all. Everyone who works in this business is passionate about it. And I think the fact that people are buying in different avenues, to pursue their hobby and their passion is great. And I think, the more camaraderie we can have around the industry, we're all in this together. We want to keep it as a clean marketplace, as a healthy and vibrant marketplace. So I think the more camaraderie we can have, without obviously sharing information that shouldn't be shared, is a healthy and good thing. And along with the distilleries and every element who plays a role in the business should be friendly and work with each other.
Sotheby's has an online auction out of its Hong Kong gallery that ends this Tuesday and has not yet released its schedule for 2021 as of today. Thanks to Jamie Ritchie of Sotheby's for joining us on this week's WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by the 2020 Distillers Edition collection lineup of single malt whiskies from Diageo's Classic Malts. Look for this year's editions of Oban, Talisker, Lagavulin, Cragganmore, Dalwhinnie, and Glenkinchie at a whiskey shop near you. Get the details at malts.com. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Sagamore Spirit. Kentucky's Wilderness Trail Distillery has been getting a lot of attention for its own whiskeys, but it's also doing contract work for other whiskey companies as well, and I've had the chance this week to taste a couple of their rye whiskeys. Since microphones play a critical role in producing WhiskyCast, if you name a whiskey mic drop, well, you're definitely going to get my attention. That's just what PM Spirits did with its second mic drop release. This one is a 4-year-old straight rye distilled at Wilderness Trail with a sweet mash recipe. That means no use of backset in the fermentation. It's bottled at 54% ABV. The nose has good baking spices, a touch of oak, and hints of toasted caramel, cocoa beans, black cherries, and molasses. The taste is spicy with cinnamon bark, clove, allspice, and a hint of anise, while a sweet note of maple syrup comes out as the spices start to fade, along with touches of black cherries, pipe tobacco, and oak. The spices linger nicely on the finish, along with those sweeter notes to fade away gently. I'm scoring the Mic Drop Rye from PM Spirits a 93. Luca Mariano whiskey is based in Michigan, but its whiskeys are distilled at Wilderness Trail, including its Old Americana small batch rye. No age statement on this one. It's bottled at 41.5% ABV. There are some similarities between these two whiskeys, but on this one, the spices are more muted on the nose and complemented by dark chocolate, pipe tobacco, dried fruits, and hints of honey and vanilla. The taste starts off light and sweet at first, with notes of dried flowers and honey, followed by a burst of baking spices that lasts into the finish, along with hints of dark chocolate and tree fruits. I'm scoring the Luca Mariano Old Americana Small Batch Rye an 88. I'll have more tasting notes in just a minute, but first, this week's tasting notes are brought to you by Sagamore Spirit Rye Whiskey. Friday the 13th may be thought of as unlucky, but that's why Sagamore Spirit celebrates Rye Day the 13th instead. Sagamore Spirit is offering you the chance to win your own barrel of whiskey. Sort of. You can get all the details at sagamorespirit.com/Rye Day the 13th. The contest ends on December 31st, and Sagamore Spirit reminds you to always drink responsibly. Now, it's always fun to taste whiskeys from new distilleries. That boutique whiskey company has bottled what are likely to be among the first independent bottlings from Finland's Helsinki Distilling Company and Scotland's Nickneen Distillery. I received samples of both the other day, and let's start with the Finnish one. See what I did there? Seriously, though, batch number 1 from the Helsinki Distilling Company is a 2-year-old rye bottled at 49% ABV. The nose has notes of rye bread, toasted caramel, sawdust, dry spices, and dark chocolate. The taste has clove and a hint of cinnamon complemented by dark chocolate, rye bread, and hints of honey and toasted caramel. The finish is nice and long with spices that fade away gently, along with dark chocolate and honey notes. I'm scoring that boutique whiskey company's batch number 1 from the Helsinki Distilling Company a 91. The Nickneen batch number 1 is a 3-year-old single malt bottled at 60.2% ABV. The nose is malty with touches of linseed oil, lemon zest, honey, and vanilla. The taste is syrupy thick with spicy touches of white pepper and allspice, along with linseed oil, honey, and butterscotch in the background. The finish is long and spicy with a bit of fieriness and white pepper spice, along with hints of lemon zest and linseed oil. I like it. I'd love to see, though, what it tastes like with a couple of more years in the cask. I'm scoring it an 89. Let's wrap up with one of the latest releases from Single Cask Nation, and one of its oldest to date, a 45-year-old Invergordon single-grain cask that was filled in 1974. It's bottled at 46.9% ABV. The nose is oaky with caramel, gentle spices, cocoa powder, and a hint of espresso. The taste has a nice balance of vanilla, toasted caramel, allspice, cocoa powder, espresso, and dried fruits. The finish is long and rich with lingering spices and touches of oak and dark chocolate. It's an excellent example of just how good single-grain whiskeys can be. I'm scoring Single Cask Nation's 1974 Invergordon a 93. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Sagamore Spirit, and those are just a few of the whiskeys I tasted this week, along with the new Woodford Reserve Masters Collection release, Heaven Hill's 85th Anniversary Single Barrel Bourbon, and whiskeys from the Dublin Liberties Distillery. I'm adding these tasting notes to our searchable list of more than 3,000 different whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at whiskycast.com.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Gabriel Cardarella again, the Dewar's guy. The holidays have always been a big part of our story. People have been unwrapping bottles of Dewar's for over 174 years. Once, we even had someone call our distillery requesting an entire cask for the holidays. That's right, a barrel full of delicious whiskey. If you were at that party, congratulations. It turns out wishes really do come true. Pretty cool, right? Well, here's another story for you. In 2019, our master blender, Stephanie McLeod, became the first woman to be awarded Master Blender of the Year by the International Whiskey Competition. And a year after that, she won it again. Stephanie's first creation for Dewar's 15 year, is another piece of history. Sweet, floral, with notes of honey and toffee, a perfectly balanced addition to the Dewar's lineup. It makes for the perfect gift. A great introduction to Scotch for beginners and more than complex enough to satisfy whiskey aficionados. So whether you're buying a gift for your father-in-law or treating yourself, make it a Dewar's 15 year and share a few stories of your own. That's what the holidays and good whiskey are all about.
It's the first episode of December, and that means it's time to announce our latest Whiskey Club of the Month. We had a lot of nominees, and it's a shame we can only pick one winner each month. But fortunately, we do carry over each month's nominees from month to month. I mentioned last time around that we honored the 1875 Whiskey Club, made up of Dublin Fire Brigade members, earlier this year. This month, we're going to honor another group of first responders, the International Police Association Whiskey Forum. I received this email from Omar, one of our longtime listeners. Hi, Mark. I'm throwing our Whiskey Club into the hat for consideration. The International Police Association Whiskey Forum is an online Facebook group of police officers from all over the world who join each other every week for dedicated whiskey nights. Founded in 2014 by members in the UK, Northern Ireland, and Ireland, the forum has grown from strength, but unfortunately, due to security concerns, it is a private group and it cannot be searched. It would make police officers, particularly in areas such as Northern Ireland, too easy to identify. But we struggle on with the support of a lot of whiskey companies, both in Ireland and the UK, who have often hosted tastings for us along with distillery visits. The group is unusual in that when the European session ends, the American one begins, and when that ends, the Australian one begins, so it can be a very active forum. The first Saturday of each month, we also do a live video stream of whomever can log in at 8 p.m. Edinburgh time. We'd love some glasses to raffle among our members so we can toast to the longest-running whiskey podcast, Sláinte. Thank you for your email, Omar, and congratulations. We'll be sending you 24 WhiskyCast Glencairn glasses to share with your members. Now, if you're in a whiskey club and would like to nominate your club, all you have to do is use the contact form at whiskycast.com, tell us a bit about your club, and if you do have a website or a social media presence, we'll be glad to add a link on our Whiskey Clubs page at the WhiskyCast website. Once again, congratulations to the International Police Association Whiskey Forum, December's Whiskey Club of the Month, and thanks to Glencairn Crystal for helping us honor whiskey clubs around the world. Let's open up the inbox now for your voice. I posted the video of my interview the other night with Bladnoch Distillery owner David Pryor on the WhiskyCast website and on our YouTube channel. Gavin at No Zephyr on Twitter posted this comment from Melbourne, Australia. Great interview and interesting to hear about the business side without the marketing hype. Thanks, Gavin. Our last episode featured Chris Ratcliffe's story on cask sales. Robbie Hunterkamp tweeted this comment from Singapore. That was a good episode. It does seem like you can't go anywhere in the whiskey world these days without running into someone selling casks or talking about, quote, whiskey as an investment. Glad you enjoyed it, Ronnie. Back in August, I interviewed Wild Turkey's superfan and author David Jennings in episode 830. Saturday, he tweeted this. Look for it at Arbird 101. Tonight, in honor of Repeal Day, I'll be blending Russell's Reserve 2002 with Russell's Reserve 2003 for the ultimate Wild Turkey 101. Stay tuned. I couldn't help responding with this. You evil person. If Jimmy and Eddie had meant for the 2002 and 2003 to be blended, they would have damn well done it themselves. You must now watch all of Matthew McConaughey's movies back to back, with an empty glass. Later that night, David tweeted this: "Well, WhiskyCast was right. The parts proved far better than the sum. Sad, but true." I'll resist the urge to gloat. Already did that on Twitter. If you have a suggestion, a question, a gripe, or anything else you'd like to share with whiskey lovers around the world, you can always find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast. The email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and all of those other things that make whiskey unique. It's brought to you by Writer's Tears. With the weather getting colder in the northern hemisphere right now, you may have started turning up the thermostat in your home. Most whiskey warehouses don't have thermostats or heating. The whiskey's temperature is allowed to rise and fall with the natural rhythm of the seasons. That is not universal, though. For instance, Woodford Reserve is one of the distilleries that heats its warehouses during the winter. I asked Master Distiller Chris Morris to explain the process, and it starts with a completely different building design.
To be heat cycled, you need masonry construction. You need insulation. And insulation at Woodford Reserve, of course, in the 1800s was 2 to 3 foot thick limestone walls in our warehouses, and then insulated brick in our 1930s warehouses. And in the new warehouse complexes we are building currently at this very moment, insulated cement slabs, tilt slab construction warehouses. So you've got to hold in heat. The classic open brick warehouses, such as you'll find at our Jack Daniels warehouses in Lynchburg, Tennessee, are wooden construction with iron siding, and they don't hold heat very well in the winter, so they get very cold. Our warehouses, because of their thick construction, can be relatively efficiently heated. The heat comes from the distillery, of course, because we're generating steam, and it's not live heat in terms of billowing steam in the building. We don't want to add moisture to the building, certainly. We like nice dry heat. So we have radiators, just like somebody might have at their apartment or their home or their condo, radiated heat. And we won't allow our temperature in the warehouse to drop below 60 degrees. And we actually started heat cycling 3 weeks ago. We've had a nice cool, not real cold until now, but a cool spell. So when the temperature hits 60 degrees, and there's thermometers that will tell us this, we'll begin to heat the building, and each warehouse is on its own cycle, its own schedule, because some get colder sooner than others, smaller ones versus larger ones, etc. And we will heat until we hit 85 degrees, which is a nice summertime-like temperature. And we'll hold that temperature for a week, and then we turn the heat off, because you do need cold as well. And we wait for the entire building to cool, and it takes a while to cool because all that barreled inventory has become 85 degrees. It's radiating heat as it's losing heat, of course. And when we hit 60 degrees again, we start the process again. So those are the cycles of driving the whiskey deep into the wood and allowing it to pull out of the wood. The natural cycles, except we're imposing them at our own control in the winter. Again, we did not invent this process, but Brown-Forman adopted it in the early 20th century. So we've been doing it for probably, right at 100 years as a company.
Heat cycling does not speed up the maturation process, but Morris says it creates more intense flavors by cycling the whiskey in and out of the wood as it expands and contracts inside the barrel with the temperature changes. Traditional warehouses will see the whiskey contracting out of the wood as it cools off this time of the year, but the liquid won't expand back into the wood until next spring. If there's something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just use the contact form at whiskycast.com to get in touch with us. Behind the Label is brought to you by Writer's Tears.
Writer's Tears Copper Pot, a rare style of Irish whiskey with a creative twist. a unique triple distilled blend of single pot still and single malt premium Irish whiskies. Writer's Tears Copper Pot. Do you dare to be creative?
That's all for this edition of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, the whiskey photo of the week, and of course a complete archive of all of our past episodes that date back to 2005. We love to hear from you. You can always get in touch with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast. The email address, comments@whiskycast.com.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
Ever wondered where Redbreast got its name? Well, let's go back to 1912 and be glad our bird-watching founder didn't spot the bar-tailed godwit that day.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
At Doers, we love a good story. And that's why we're always writing new chapters. Like our double-double series. 21, 27, and 32-year-old whiskeys, each double-aged for ultimate smoothness, then finished in different sherry casks, making them perfect gifts. Or even better, buy one and give it as a gift and keep the other for yourself. You know what they say, it's better to give and receive.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2020, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening. Please stay safe and enjoy the holidays.